going on YouTube? Culturedog Sam Hatch back with another Blu-ray review. Yeah, I know I've been getting tons of these things lately. Again, this I got way back in, well, not way back in, but earlier in 2016, and sadly had not gotten a chance to sit down and talk about it here until now. But it is another Shout Factory, Shout Select release, number 6 in the series, a collector's edition of the Sylvester Stallone flick, Nighthawks. I always love the poster right there because they're, Rutger Hauer and Sylvester Stallone's eyes make them look like they're wall-eyed because they're both looking in different directions. But yeah, Nighthawks, I had always heard about this flick from my mom. For some reason, I always thought this was like a 1978 film or something like that, but it's actually 1981. So Billy D. Williams is in it, but he had already been Lando Calrissian by the time this thing dropped. Was film directed by Bruce Malmuth, who has bit parts in the Karate Kid films and also directed Hard to Kill, Steven Seagal's classic. But it's a really gritty, mostly New York-based, terrorism thriller involving Deke De Silva, a super cross-dressing detective that takes down perps on the streets and mostly, purse thieves and that sort of stuff, and really goes to town on them. And Sergeant Matthew Fox, played by Billy D. Williams, is his partner, and they run afoul of an international super terrorist named Wolfgar, also known as Hamar Reinhardt, played by Rutger Hauer, and then his also morally corrupt assistant Shaka, played by Persis Kambata, hot off of Star Trek: The Motion Picture fame. And there's a lot of scenes of Wolfgar tearing up department stores in London with Catherine Mary Stewart in a bit part as a counter girl there flirting with him. And then also a kind of hipster party gone awry when some bad guys come to take out Wolfgar while he's trying to pick up the ladies and do some guitar strumming, and then he just tears into these dudes with automatic weapon fire. And eventually he decides to maneuver himself into New York, but he doesn't know that Sylvester Stallone is ready to kick some booty there. Lindsay Wagner's in the film in a very truncated role, apparently, because there was a lot of talk in her documentary piece about how their relationship was a lot bigger and a lot more fleshed out. But it's very Bullet-esque in this, that she's, this kind of beleaguered woman. She's an ex, I think, at the point of the film where we meet her, and she works in the fashion industry, and she, obviously loved Sylvester Stallone, but had to give him up because of his, his career and how dangerous it was, and she can't live with the thought of him almost dying all the time. So from that point on, she largely becomes a plot device, and he will call her every once in a while just to remind the audience that she exists to become a plot device later on, which you can probably see coming a mile down the street. But the film is definitely about the energy that Rutger Hauer has, but Stallone's none too shabby either, and him and Billy D. Williams, they're believable as this duo. And as Wolfgar's coming to New York, it does kind of like hit the brakes a little bit, because there's this kind of not lame, but kind of slow and not really unnecessary, but just loses a lot of energy during this training scene where the terrorism expert kind of trains them on entering the mind of Wolfgar, and these guys are just regular agents that could never comprehend like his thought processes, and that obviously becomes a driving plot point for Sylvester Stallone later, that he has to kind of think like Wolfgar to best him. But those training scenes are just the cops kind of not caring and sitting in a classroom environment within the precinct house, and that stuff kind of, the thrusters start to dim a little bit, but it does thankfully pick back up again. And there's a hostage situation on a cable car. One of those things, you always forget about the Roosevelt Island cable cars, and then they show up in movies, and you're like Dark Water, and you're like, what? Or The Professional, and you're like, what? There's cable cars in New York? So it was cool that they were able to use those. It's supposedly, I don't know if this is true or not, that it was conceived as a French Connection 3 with Popeye Doyle teaming up with like Richard Pryor. And Gary Nelson from Freaky Friday and Black Hole was supposed to direct, so that's pretty interesting. But apparently he was replaced a week after shooting by Malmuth. It is pretty gritty stuff. Apparently, it didn't resonate with audiences because nobody really believed in urban terrorism on home soil. So that wasn't anything that struck up a chord with audiences and made them grip their chair arms with tension. So that was kind of interesting, considering what eventually happened in New York in multiple occasions. And supposedly Sylvester Stallone himself re-edited the film because he was post-Rocky at the time and kind of a big deal, and decided to take matters into his own hands. But the interesting thing about this is collectors of this film have long known that there's an issue with Universal, the studio, getting the rights to Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones, which is part of a major set piece where Deke and his partner are going around to all the discotheques in New York City. And it's a really cool kind of like disco travelogue, like pub crawl, looking for Wolfgar, because that's like Wolfgar's downfall, is that he's an inhuman bastard, but he always seeks female companionship, and he always has to have a girlfriend. So they know he's going to be out there hitting on chicks at the discotheques. So one of the big major pieces where, Deke's looking around the room, good, the bad, and the ugly style, trying to seek out his prey, is all set to Brown Sugar, and they lost the rights to it, and apparently the DiscoVision Laserdisc has it on it, but the Laserdisc I have, that was repressed in the 90s or whatever, has this generic music, some sort of library music placed over it. But with no fanfare at all, Shout Factory dropped this, which has the Brown Sugar audio track in the scene intact. So this is like the original soundtrack. Didn't even mention it. So wicked cool that they were able to do that. So yeah, it's not regarded as a great film, but it's funny, I just grew up hearing it was a great film because my mom loved it. And yeah, I mean, this sort of thing is definitely in my wheelhouse. Gritty kind of cop flick, on the verge of exploitational and with a very larger than life villain. That's some fun stuff. And it's got some hokey stuff. The bit with it even shows it looping in the menu when Deke kind of being raised up into the cable car for a hostage negotiation. He's just kind of dangling like an idiot from this cart, slowly being raised up. It's the antithesis of an action scene. So it's supposed to be filled with tension because what's going to happen when he gets up there? But you're like, he just looks like a baby just kind of sitting in a grocery cart, just kind of doing his thing. And then, the hilarity of De Silva's secret weapon being that he's a master cross-dresser. is great. So, yeah. So yeah, if you want to see Stallone in drag, and not really pulling it off, but yeah, check out Nighthawks. It's awesome. So yeah, I had to invite the parents over to watch this. We fired it up, and this thing looks great. The transfer is excellent, and it's got that grainy look that I'd want to see from a gritty film of this nature. James Contner's cinematography is it's really gritty, and it really carries through in this transfer. And I was just in love with the deep blacks, but not to the point where you lose shadow detail and you start to lose definition and can't see what's going on. But no, it just had that real kind of punch you in the face black level, and I thought it made the flick look great for that regard. So I mean, a lot of the stuff, the settings of the film aren't very delightful. They're just very gray and stone and unglamorous. But this film, looks amazing on Blu-ray. Just 1.85 to 1, no scope film or anything like that. But I love the transfer on this. Audio is just mono, DTS HD Master Audio. It's got a interesting score from Keith Emerson of Emerson, Lake and Palmer fame. But it's a little strident at time, but it's got a cool 70s, early 80s vibe to it, which brings a lot of energy to the table. But it just sounds like a regular early 80s cop movie soundtrack for the most part. But I could hear all the conversations well, and I didn't have any problems with that. There was no distortion or anything like that. It sounded great. I really cranked it up too when we played it. So I don't know. Sometimes a cool mono track sounds great when you crank it up and when you have a transfer of this quality, it really has that, like, you're sitting in an old cinema house kind of vibe. And yeah, for a collector's edition, it does drop a couple special features, including Lights, Camera, Action, a new audio interview with producer Herb Nanas, and Nighthawks, the First Draft, an interview with writer Paul Silbert, which talks about how this film kind of moved around and changed form over time. And then we got to shoot this, an interview with DP James Contner, and A Sign of the Times, an interview with Lindsay Wagner. Lindsay Wagner was a cool interview because she seemed really, really bummed out that so much of her stuff got excised of the film, and she really enjoyed working with Stallone and the work that they put into their characters. A lot of that stuff hit the cutting room floor, so I know she was disappointed by that. But yeah, it was cool that she sat down to talk. And Not the Other Girls, interview with actress Catherine Mary Stewart, which is cool because she was just a bit player in this film. So yeah, that was interesting. Her talking about her brief role in the film, how she got it, working with Rutger, Hauer, etc., and how terrifying he was. And then another new one, It Was Hell, an interview with technical advisor Randy Jurgensen, and also theatrical trailer, radio spots. There's a still gallery in there as well. So yeah, decent special features. Nothing from Billy D. Williams or Rutger Hauer or Stallone himself, unfortunately. But yeah, I'm sure they got bigger fish to fry. But it's a fun early '80s action flick, and even my dad, I don't think he really liked it that much, but when he saw it the first time, he was like, all right, yeah, that was pretty fun. So it was, I think watching it in a good presentation like this, if you're a fan, you're going to love it. And even if you're not a fan, you might find out that you like it more than you thought you did. So Nighthawks, yeah.